Welcome back to The Heat. Turkish voters will decide on constitutional amendments this weekend that could change how the country is governed. Joining us now from Ann Arbor, Michigan is Fatma Muge Gocek. She's a professor of sociology and women's studies at the University of Michigan. With us from Ohio is Erik Nisbet. He is associate professor with the Mershon Center for International Security Studies at Ohio State University. And Hakan Camuz is an international legal consultant based in London. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Muge, let me start with you. President Erdogan and the AK party tell us that these changes proposed in the referendum are necessary for strong economic growth and to bring stability to the country. And there is general agreement across the political spectrum in Turkey that changes are needed. But what do you make of these changes that are being proposed?
I think the changes that are being proposed basically will do away with any vestige of democracy and protection of human rights in Turkey in general. The changes will make the president a much more autocratic person, and it will take away at least the illusion of democracy that is in Turkey today.
Well, those are tough words, taking away democracy and human rights in Turkey. Let me put those words to Hakan. Hakan, what about the criticism that you've just heard?
I just find it to be very unfair and biased and one-sided and not based on the truth and evidence. And she's an academic. She should base her criticism on evidences. Democracy has been functioning in Turkey like past 15 years. And President Erdogan and AK Party have won every election by a popular vote. You couldn't accuse them of being not democratic when you have that much of a history behind you.
I do not agree with you.
Go ahead,
I do not agree with you. I cannot at the moment go back to Turkey because I am afraid I will be arrested because of having signed a peace. As you know, there was a peace petition that I signed. I mean, all of my colleagues are in prison. Most of them have lost their jobs. There is a huge purge of officers and officials. I mean, what democracy are you talking about when I personally cannot experience it?
If you have signed up a terrorist organization's petition and there's a charge against you, why don't you face justice if you believe in democracy and justice?
Okay, I want to bring Erik into this.
Come on.
All right, one moment. I want to bring Erik into this. Erik, you're hearing there's differing viewpoints. What do you make of it? Is this a power grab on the part of the president? Or does a country like Turkey need to change?
Well, first of all, I think these two opposing viewpoints represent the polarization going on in Turkey right now. And it's one reason why the political compromise about any type of constitutional changes in Turkey that are needed are so difficult. But basically, the referendum as it stands, the constitutional changes that are proposed, they most likely will lead to a deterioration of democracy in Turkey. If you look at any type of independent analysis, the constitutional changes will not make Turkey more like France or the United States, as supporters of the referendum argue, but rather more like authoritarian country in countries like Russia. I'd like to say that President Erdogan in many ways admires the executive and authoritative powers of President Putin.
All right.
And I think this would be in that direction.
All right, let me ask Hakan to respond to that.
Sure, of course. I don't believe Professor Nisbet has actually read the 18 amendments that's being put forward in the referendum. He actually understood the details of it, but he's making superficial comments that he read here and there. I actually believe if he read it, if he understood it, he would actually see checks and balances being brought forward with this amendment to the Constitution that controls the presidential powers, the executive powers, that enhances the power of the parliament, brings independent judiciary, allows many new democratic progresses taking place in Turkey. If he actually understood the 18 amendments that's being moved forward, I don't think the criticism would be, the way he's criticizing would be valid.
I think I understand them very well.
One moment, I just want to get to Muge.
Well, I mean, This is great. We have two academics on the one side who are accused by a lawyer who is a professional who does not have an academic degree for not knowing knowledge, which is supposed to be what we do for a living. I mean, I find that crass. I mean, I wish there were another academic to represent the government's view, if they can find one among themselves, who is qualified to be on this program with us.
Okay.
The other thing is the peace petition I signed were signed by 2,200 academics. They were not signed or prepared by a guerrilla organization, which is what they refer to.
I don't think you should turn this into a personal issue. This is a TV program where we don't talk personal stuff.
Right, let me...
You're
it is not
personalizing the issue
personal.
here.
All right, Erik, let's take a listen to what the leader of the opposition, CHP, or the Republican Party, as it's known, had to say about the referendum. Let's watch this.
Sure.
Bugünkü sistemin aksayan yönü var mı? Elbette var.
Of course there are loopholes in the current system. Of course it should be amended. Election law must change. 10% of election threshold must be lifted. Political ethics law must be enacted. Bylaws and laws must be changed. Democratic standards must be improved. We have no objection. We say yes to all of them, and we have submitted legislative proposals, but it's impossible to hand over Turkey and 80 million people to one man.
So, Erik, here we have the CHP saying that, yes, there is a need for change in Turkey. Do you believe that Turkey needs change as well?
I think so, and I think his words represent fair criticism. The electoral threshold in Turkey is the highest in the world. Now, that promotes political stability, but also allows sort of domination by large parties and reduces political pluralism. There are issues of freedom of expression, media freedom, election laws that do need reform in Turkey.
Right.
But the constitutional changes are ceding too much power to an executive presidency with little check on its power compared to other democracies in the world. And if you look at most democracies in the world, most of them are parliamentary systems. They're not presidents.
Professor Nisbet's country, in America, there's only 2 political parties that actually take part in election, and there's no 10% issue. And as you know,
it's
in
first
the
past
last 3
the post.
elections,
It's a
we always
different
had a
type of
dispute
system.
about
It's not a
the role
parliamentary
of the... But at the same time, we have 4 different parties represented in Turkish parliament. So, and every aspect of Turkish community have actually been represented in Turkish parliament. So you can't say this is
Only recently has the HDP been able to enter parliament because of that threshold.
One at a time, please. Muge, go ahead.
And half of the members of one of the political parties are jailed. I mean, you know, and you have systematically, literally gotten rid of all Kurdish civil society organizations.
We're not talking about that.
What are you talking about?
We're not talking about that.
Yes, we are talking about that. You're talking about an independent judiciary when you have the president actually appointing some of the members of that judiciary. What independence?
So does the President Trump and President Obama and every other president that came to America.
Yes,
they represent the judges.
But it's different. The Congress has to approve those appointments.
Exactly.
Well, that's what this Constitution does. It's exactly the point. This Constitution amendment actually does that.
Let me ask you about the civil rights situation in Turkey right now. The country has come under strong criticism.
Exactly.
President Erdogan himself has been criticized for the erosion of civil rights in Turkey. Journalists have been put in prison. We've got over 140,000 civil servants, including members of the judiciary, the police force, the military, losing their jobs. What is your response to that?
The very terrorist organization that actually done the coup attempt in Turkey killed 250 people, injured over 2,000, trying to take over a country. They are the members of this organization, and most of them have been dismissed by their affiliation. They've not been taken into prisons as they are actually putting through. What I'm saying is those who actually have a guilt in their hands, have been directly involved in the coup attempts, of course they have to face justice. This is a democracy we're talking about here. They're not being hanged on the streets. They have to be going through the legal process, which is what's happening right now.
Oh, God.
Okay, go ahead, Muge.
This is the cover of justice. And I mean, I am so sad that justice in Turkey has to be defended by people like you, the law of justice. I mean, what the problem is that this terrorist organization,
You're just angry.
The Gülen movement was actually allied with Erdogan, and Erdogan and the Justice and Development Party supported it for decades before turning on to each other. And then that is when they parted ways, and suddenly the organization that Erdogan and all the JDP people praised to the skies became a terrorist organization. The other thing is the coup, the alleged coup was actually a coup, as many international scholars agree, already known by JDP
Who are
and
these international
Erdogan,
scholars
and
that
used
agree? You're just talking hot air. You're not basing anything you're saying on evidence. You're an academic. You're supposed to base this on evidence.
Muge, let me ask you this, and this is a critical point. If there is a yes vote in Turkey, if the people of Turkey vote for these changes, will you accept that?
I will not answer either a yes vote or a no vote, because according to a study done at the University of Michigan by political scientists, the last elections which Justice and Development Party won were rigged. I mean, if that is the case, I do not know whether this one will not be rigged either. So because of that, and I also think
and then
that
you call yourself an academic. And then you call yourself an academic.
Can I just say that some opponents of the referendum have been calling people not to vote or boycott it? I think that's a huge mistake. This referendum will be perceived as legitimate, and not voting, if you oppose to a referendum, will only give power to the yes vote.
But Erik, there are critics who would say that can you have can you have a fair referendum in what is effectively a state of emergency?
That's a good question, and I think that's a critique. But this referendum will decide the future of Turkey, and not to participate in it is a mistake.
Can I say something? France is under a state of emergency since the terrorist attacks. But they're going for election. Why can't it happen in France and not in Turkey? Why is there discrimination?
The state of emergencies are different.
The words are thrown in the air. How is that different? Why do you think the French voters can do it, but Turkish voters cannot do it?
Hakan, Muge, Erik, thanks to all of you for joining us. We're going to have to leave it there. Time's run out.